All right, so if you've been following me for any length of time, you know how much I like to rip on bloat. So today, I'm bringing you some visual aids for my rant about bloat. And we're going to start. This is from the Of Two Minds blog by Charles Hugh Smith. And I'm going to start out with this simple picture right here. The life cycle of a bureaucracy. So the blue circle on the outside is the budget the program gets. The red circle is the bloat, the administrative costs. So when a new company comes into existence, you get the top left, the launch. You have tight budgets, there's modest pay, there's minimal benefits, but there's high camaraderie. Everyone's like BFFs, because this is, if you go back to gaming terms, this is the five friends just doing a hobby or trying to make a living off of their hobby in their garage. Like, oh, we love games. We just want to make a game and see if we can make some shekels out of it. That's that phase. And then the company grows. So there's rapid growth in the program and staffing. That's the big one. Now, this is where the bloat starts being added, and morale is high because money's coming in. The programs are making a bunch of money. You can pay for all the people, and then you got maturity. This is the big one. Mission creep, quote unquote. Unions and administrators gain political power. Debts solidify. Infighting. Yep. There's multiple departments now. It's not just a group of five friends in their garage doing something they love. Now, let's say going back to game devs, the company was very successful. So now you got like 6 different development teams working on different projects, and they're all fighting for the same slice of the budget. So yeah, there's infighting, there's debts, there's office politics, mission creep, and then the contraction begins. Those are the 3 steps of the expansion. Now there's the contraction. You get to the bloat. Sound familiar, huh? So the bloat. The budget is flat, but the administrative costs rise. Doesn't this sound exactly like what's going on in the public indoctrination system? Yeah, they always need more money. Now, if we just had more money, we could improve the schools. But every time they get more money, it either goes to some slush fund and doesn't get spent on the school anyway, and the money that makes it to the school gets spent on the administrators. Yeah, gaming the system and fraud are rife. If you're in a company like this, you know there's no point in excelling, because that's just going to get a target painted on your back. Because going back to the office politics, the people who just want to game the system and coast along easily are going to make sure you get destroyed if you do way better than them. They don't want that. You're going to be held back. And if you get rewarded for your work, it's going to be via more work. So after the bloat phase, now we get to the budget cuts. Programs are abandoned as focus shifts to protecting budget and staff and pay benefits. Yep. This is where the bloat actually starts cutting away those that do the real work in order to protect themselves, failing to realize that if they cut away everyone who does the real work, who's going to be there to make them money and pay their paychecks? They always forget that part. Yeah, every company I've ever been laid off from, they always forgot that. And then the ultimate failure and implosion. The competent retire or they leave. And leaving the incompetent in command, morale is low, chaos and failure are the norm, and organizational implosion. This is exactly how it goes. Now, I'm watching this happen to a friend of mine too at her workplace. There was like 2 people that were pretty much doing all the work for the whole department. And they didn't retire. They just flat out quit. They were like, screw you guys. I'm not going to be doing 80 hours a week anymore to carry this fucking bloat. I'm going to get a better job. And they quit. And now the company is pretty much like, it's on the downward spiral. There's no way they're going to survive. Anyone who actually knew what they were doing, the competent people, all left. And the incompetent are now like, oh, fuck. We're the only ones left now. It's like, what do you imagine would happen if you had a host and a bunch of parasites attached to the host, and then one day the host just brushed the parasites off and walked out of the room? How long do you think the parasites could survive without their host? Because that's what happens ultimately once the bloat takes over and the competent people realize they're not going to be rewarded for good work. Like, look at fucking Marvel and DC, for example. I wouldn't be surprised if these comic professionals were actually way better than they let on with their writing and art that gets published, but they just figure it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. If I do good work, the company's not going to reward me for it anyway. I'm not going to get anything out of it. I don't own these characters anyway. What motivation do I have? As opposed to a company that's still in its launch phase, where you got 5 friends working on something they're passionate about, and they're willing to put the effort in the hopes that it will pay off in the future, because they at least have that hope that there will be a payoff. There is at least that fucking hope there, which is completely gone in these giant bloated organizations, especially if they're ran by NPCs. This article is from December of current year -9. Yeah, let's read through some of the article proper. The life cycle of bureaucracy. All bureaucracies share a life cycle of growth, self-protection, and implosion, which I just went into. Yesterday, so I guess December 1st, current year -9, this guy discussed the doubling, tripling, and quadrupling of the big-ticket household expenses, property taxes, public college tuition, and healthcare costs. And somebody asked him, why are those things going up so drastically in cost? To whose benefit? The common thread I would immediately see after the first few sentences was the public sector employees and their unions who inhabit those entities. So this writer from Canada, where healthcare is overtly a public and central state service. But in the U.S., if you toed up Medicare and Medicaid, the Veterans Administration healthcare system, over $1 trillion per year for these 3 agencies, and all 2,300 pages of regulations on the so-called private healthcare system, the profits are privatized and the costs are socialized. Does that sound like something I've said before too? Then what you have is a de facto government-controlled healthcare system with all the fraud, fiefdoms, waste, duplication, and resistance to efficiency of a government bureaucracy. And the profits of that are all being siphoned away by one private entity, usually. Before we get to the life cycle of bureaucracy, which I already cheated you out of because I already went in there, I want to be clear this is not a slam on people who dutifully work in bureaucracies. Bureaucracies arise to serve a social or political need or perceived need. That's the big one there, the perceived needs. That's the shit that needs to be culled right there. The second people realize they don't actually need it, it needs to be cut in an organized fashion, and the systems of management, accounting, and oversight, and so on are required. Now, again, that's true. But just as bureaucracies arise, they also ossify, devote their energy to self-preservation, and then implode. We can see how this works on this chart of the University of California's systems count of faculty and administrators. I suspect this phenomenon is universal in state-funded universities. Bureaucratic staff that have nothing to do with the classroom, research, or teaching grow to dominate the payroll and the budget. So look at this. This is number of senior managers and ladder compared to faculty. So back in 1997, you had, 3,500 managers, administrators? You had 3,500 people in a bloat position in 1997. And you had less than 7,000 faculty, people who are actually important. And now, go up to 2009, you got maybe 2,000 more faculty. How much more bloat right there? 4,500? So the bloat is skyrocketing. The amount of faculty is gradually increasing while the bloat is skyrocketing. This is where the rising costs of college comes from all the extra bloat. It's not a funding problem. It's not a money problem. Throwing more money at this problem will only result in the bloat growing bigger. Money is not the problem. The bloat is the problem. You can come ask me for more money once you trim all your fucking bloat. Because I can guarantee you, if they cut the administrators back down from over 8,000 to just over 3,000, they would suddenly have billions of dollars they could magically spend on the students again, on the teachers. So much of this is human nature. If the budget can be expanded to serve my department or agency, then it will be expanded. Yup, that's where the office politics and the backstabbing and all that comes in that we just talked about. There are other organizational tropisms as well. For E&A, for example, everyone needs an assistant, including the current assistant. Oh, I've seen that too. The guy, no, when your secretary has a secretary, I think you might be a bit fucking bloated. When an economy is growing rapidly, then the waste, fraud, duplication, inefficiency, and bloat go unnoticed because tax revenues and the budget are rising faster than the bloat. The problem arises when the revenues fall or they flatline. Even flatlining is enough. Even failure to grow is enough to bring these bloated organizations to their fucking knees. Then the bureaucratic impulse to never-ending growth is stymied, and the various bureaucracies turn inwards as they muster their forces to wage internecine warfare with other protected fiefdoms. Yup, that's when the different departments start fighting each other. Self-preservation becomes the paramount concern, and the original purpose of the bureaucracy is buried beneath the urgent priority of saving prerequisites, benefits, staffing, and budgets. So the bureaucracy starts serving only the bureaucracy and nothing else. When cuts are required, the actual service provided is slashed to maintain bureaucratic bloat. Once again, look at the school system. This is exactly what's going on there. They keep cutting the teachers. They keep cutting, they keep cutting benefits for students. They keep cutting all that, but they're still getting more money. That's because the bloat is eating up all the money. The administrators are cutting the services they provide so they can keep getting their multi-million-dollar bonuses at the end of the year. So once again, you can ask for more budget once you trim your fucking bloat. So thus the administration of a university suffers simulacrum cuts, a hiring freeze, etc., while the teaching and graduate student teaching assistant staff levels are slashed and burned. Or the tip of the spear, military forces and readiness are left twisting in the wind while the thousands of senior officers in the Pentagon and services jostle for promotions. Yup. Yeah, applying this thought process to the military, that's what's happening. Like, say we were in a war and we actually need to win this, but it's like a 50-50 chance. And meanwhile, the generals, the senior officers in the back, like safely behind friendly lines, all the way in the safest area possible, keep cutting frontline soldiers so they could get more money. This is what's going on in all these businesses. You got the administrators who honestly don't really do that much to keep the business running compared to the people actually delivering the product or service. They're cutting the people delivering the product or service to save their own job, and then they wonder why everything's collapsing when everyone who did the real work is gone. So at the point of implosion, there are more captains, colonels, and generals than actual war fighters. Yeah, God, that happened to me when I worked for a giant defense contractor, yeah. Yeah, after enough rounds of layoffs, there was more managers than employees. Now, how the fuck does that even work? I mean, I'll tell you how it works. It was exactly like Office Space, where every employee had like 5 managers. So that's how that worked. Yeah, there are plenty of barbers, cooks, and waiters and assistants, though, to serve the senior officers. Yeah, the yes men, the bootlickers, the people providing them with the stuff they want. Oh, they're never going to go away either, yeah. So benefits for the survivors are left basically untouched, while the new hires are fired to preserve the budget for those with seniority. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this before. In all the companies I've seen this happen at, they could have laid off 1 or 2 useless VPs, and they would have saved like 10 frontliners to actually do the job and let the company recover and actually make them profitable again. But no, let's get rid of the people who do the actual work to preserve the bloat. At some point, the mission of the bureaucracy is completely lost, and the citizens' patience with institutional incompetence and self-aggrandizement finally runs out. Although it seems impossible in an area where the Federal Reserve just conjures up $1 trillion and the federal government sells $1.3 trillion in bonds every year to fund its ballooning deficit, bureaucracies can and will implode. On a small scale, we are seeing this process in action as small-town police forces are disbanded. This process will eventually be seen in smaller cities merging with adjacent cities to cut costs. And yeah, we're going to be seeing plenty of going broke here soon. You know, all this shit I've been saying about bloat for all these years, I'm not the only one. I mean, there was people going back 9 years that were saying this shit. It's just nobody fucking listened. And here we are. So that's what I got to say about that.